wearing on you. Life has a way of bringing seasons you never saw coming. Life has a way of humbling you, of breaking your heart, of making you wonder. And if we're honest, there are some seasons nobody prepares us for. The seasons where we're praying, but you're tired. The seasons where you're believing, but you're wondering. The season where your smile is bigger than your strength. The season where you tell everyone, I'm fine. But deep down, you're asking, Lord, how much longer? Lord, what am I going to do? What are you doing? Lord, I know what you said, but what do I do with what I see? Can we tell the truth tonight, though? Sometimes what we see just doesn't look anything like what God promised. And that's where the battle begins. Because somewhere between the prayer and the answer, somewhere between the dream and the manifestation, somewhere between the tears and the testimony, it is easy to forget. It's easy to forget what God said. It's easy to forget his faithfulness. It's easy to forget what he's already brought us through. It's easy to forget what isn't happening. But ladies, I came tonight to remind you that don't you dare let one difficult season make you forget a lifetime of God's faithfulness. Don't you dare let what you see make you forget what God said. Don't you dare let disappointment talk louder than destiny. And don't you dare let fear have the final word. Because the same God who carried you then is carrying you now. The same God who made a way then will make a way now. The same God who was faithful then is faithful now. And whatever season you walked into this room carrying, whatever burden you're holding, whatever prayer you've almost stopped praying, tonight, I came to remind you of one thing, and that's to remember the promise. When you can't see it, remember the promise. Let's talk about that season. Not the season where everything is coming together. Not the season where the doors are opening and everybody is celebrating. Let's talk about the season nobody posting about, nobody is talking about. It's the season where you don't see anything. Nothing. No answers, no movement, no explanation, just silence. But can I tell you something? That's the season that will test what you really believe. Because see, anybody can praise God when the answers come quickly. Anybody can trust him when the doctor's report is good. Anybody can trust him, can celebrate when the door swings wide open. But what do you do when you've prayed over that child for years? What do you do when you've been carrying that dream in your heart for decades? What do you do when you've been faithful? You've been praying, you've been trusting, you've done everything you know to do, and still it seems like nothing is happening. What do you do when what you see doesn't line up with what God said? Ladies, you remember the promise. Because here's what I've learned. God does some of his best work in places we can't see. I know that's frustrating. I get frustrated too, because you know what? We want signs. We want movement. We want answers. We want God to send us an email and explain everything. Anybody besides me feel like that? You want to see. I want to know the date, the time, the plan, and the details. But ladies, faith doesn't work that way. And that's why Jeremiah 29:11 means so much to me, because it says, for I know the plans I have for you. Because there have been seasons in my life, ladies, I will tell you, I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know the why. I didn't know the how. I didn't know the when. I didn't know what God was doing. But God says, I know. And after all these years, I've learned something. God has never asked me to understand anything. He has asked me to trust him. He has asked me to trust his word, his promises. He has also asked me to trust. Trust is easy when life makes sense, right? Trust is easy when prayers are being answered. Trust is easy when everything is working out. But trust becomes real when you don't understand. Trust becomes real when heaven feels quiet. Trust becomes real when everybody around you is asking questions you don't have answers to. And just because you don't see it, it doesn't mean God stopped working. Don't you dare let one season make you forget what God said. You remember the promise. When the promise seems delayed, remember the promise. Let's talk about time. Because if we're honest, sometimes the hardest part of believing God is the waiting on God. I don't know if anybody else can understand what I'm talking about. It's not that you don't have faith. It's not that you stop praying. It's not that you stop believing. It's that you've been waiting and waiting and waiting some more. And after a while, you start looking at the calendar. You start looking at the clock. You start looking at how old you're getting. You're just looking at the time go by. And if we're honest, that's when questions start. Lord, how much longer do I have to wait? Lord, when is it my turn? When is my season going to happen? Has anybody here ever asked yourself those questions? Because I know I have. Because there are some promises that don't happen in a month. There are some prayers that don't get answered in a year. There are some dreams that require us to trust God longer than we ever imagined. And if we're not careful, delay can start talking to us. Have you ever had delay whispering in your ear things like, it's never going to happen? You should have let this go a long time ago. You need to move on and stop hoping. Ladies, that's when many people quit right there. Not because God failed, because they got tired of waiting. But let me remind you, delay is not denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean God said no. Just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean God isn't working. Just because it's taking longer than you expected doesn't mean God has forgotten. Because God's timetable and our timetable are often very different things. We want microwave miracles. We want it to happen immediately. God is often doing slow cooker work, preparing us deeply. And I've learned, looking back over my own journey, some of the things I cried and begged and screamed because they didn't happen when I wanted them to happen. And now thank God for the delay because I wasn't ready. The timing wasn't right. The people weren't right. The season wasn't right. I didn't know that, but God knew. And because he knew, I could trust it. Ladies, don't allow the length of the wait to make you question the faithfulness of God. The promise is not less true because it's taking longer. The promise is not less true because another birthday came. The promise is not less true because another year passed. If God said it, it still stands. If God promised it, it still stands. If God placed it in your spirit, it still stands. And maybe tonight, God is reminding somebody not to give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Don't stop believing because the calendar says it's late, because God is never late. And what he promised, he will bring to pass. So when the promise seems delayed, you remember the promise. When you're tired, you remember the promise. Can we just be real honest right here for a moment? I know this may shock some of you, but strong women get tired. Women of faith get tired. Praying women, they get tired. Women who carry families get tired. Women who pour into everybody else get tired. Women who encourage everybody get tired. And maybe that's just where some of us are tonight. We're not giving up. We're just tired. And there is a difference. You're tired of waiting. You're tired of caring so much. You're tired of being the strong one. You're tired of worrying. You're tired of smiling when your own heart is heavy. You're tired of holding everything together. And sometimes if we're honest, we don't even know how to explain the kind of tired we feel. Anybody know what I mean? It's not physical tired. It's soul tired. It's the kind of tired that comes from carrying things for too long. It's the kind of tired that comes from praying the same prayer for years. It's the kind of tired that comes from being disappointed and still trying to hope again. It's the kind of tired that comes from showing up for everybody else and wondering, who is showing up for me? The kind of tired that comes from the encourager. It comes from the caretaker. It comes from the fixer. It comes from the one everybody calls when they need something. It comes from the one that everybody leans on. And somewhere along the way, you realize nobody's even asking how I'm doing. Nobody has even noticed that I'm carrying something too. Nobody has even seen my tears, my struggles, the weight I carry. But I'm here to tell you that God did. He saw every tear. He saw every sleepless night. He saw every moment you smiled while your heart was breaking. Every prayer you whispered when you didn't have the strength to pray out loud. He saw every time you said, Lord, help me make it through one more day. He saw it all. And maybe that's one of the reasons Isaiah 40:31, I love it so much, because God knew there would be seasons when we would become weary. He knew there would be moments when we felt like we had nothing left. He knew there would be days when we wondered if we could even keep going. So he didn't promise that we wouldn't get tired. What he promised is that he would renew our strength. Just think about that for a moment. Renew our strength. Because sometimes life drains us, right? People drain us. Responsibilities drain us. Disappointment, waiting drains us. But God says, I know what life has taken from you, and I know how to restore it. Ladies, maybe tonight you don't need all the answers. Maybe tonight you don't need another strategy, another plan. What you need is strength. Strength to keep trusting. Strength to keep loving. Strength to keep hoping, to keep showing up. Strength to pray one more prayer. Strength to dream one more dream. Strength to get up one more morning and say, God, I still trust you. Because what I've learned, some of the strongest women I know are also the most tired women I know. Not because they're weak, but because they've been carrying a lot. And if that's you tonight, hear me clearly. Being tired does not mean you've lost your faith. Being tired does not mean you're failing. Being tired does not mean God has forgotten you. It means you've been fighting. And fighters get tired. Warriors get tired. Women who refuse to quit get tired. But here's the good news. You don't have to carry it by yourself. The same God who carried you through every season before this one will carry you through this one too. The same God who gave you the strength yesterday will give you the strength tomorrow. The same God that has sustained you then will sustain you now. So rest. Cry if you need to. Take a break if you need to. Step back for a moment if you need to. But don't you dare give up. Don't you dare walk away from a promise because you're tired. Don't you dare let exhaustion make decisions that faith needs to make. Because tired is a season. It is not your identity. And this season will not last forever. God is still with you. He is still strengthening you. He is still carrying you. So when you're tired, you remember the promise. When fear starts talking, remember the promise. Now, I want to spend a little time on fear because fear has probably talked to every woman in this room. Fear talks to young women, to seasoned women, to mothers, to leaders, to women of faith. Fear don't care who you are. Fear doesn't talk to just certain people. Fear talks to everybody. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You know, fear can show up in the middle of the night. You ever been in a good sleep and fear just shows up? You start hearing those questioning words in your mouth. Now you can't even get back to sleep. Fear has a way of showing up when you're finally ready to take that step. Fear has a way of showing up right after you decide that you're just going to trust God. Fear will show up just when God gives you a dream and you're saying yes to it. Fear will show up right after you decide to move, right after you decide to believe again, right when you start believing. That's when fear shows up. And fear starts asking questions like, what if this doesn't work? What if I fail again? What if nothing changes again? What if disappointment happens again? What if I get my hopes up and nothing happens? Have you ever asked yourself those questions when you were right there on the verge of making the decision to go forward? I have asked those questions many times, but here's what I've learned, that fear is a thief. Fear will steal your joy. Fear will steal your peace. Fear will steal your confidence. Fear will have you living in tomorrow's problems before tomorrow ever arrives. But this is the thing about fear, guys. Fear sounds reasonable. It makes sense. It's logical. It sounds convincing until you hold it up against God's promises. For instance, fear will say, what if it doesn't work? But faith says, what if it does? Fear says, it's too late. God says, I make all things new. Fear says, you've missed your chance. God says, I know the plans I have for you. Fear says, you are not enough. God says, I will supply you with all your needs. Fear says, you're alone. But God says, I will never leave you. Ladies, listening to what's happening. Fear is talking to you. Fear is asking clear questions. But God is talking too. So the question becomes, what voice are you giving authority over your life? Because the voice you listen to will determine the direction of your walk. And I've had enough experience with God to know fear has lied to me before. Fear told me I wouldn't make it. Fear told me my dream was too big. Fear told me the obstacles was too great for me. Fear told me the season would never change. Fear lied. And maybe somebody needs to hear that tonight. Just because fear says it doesn't make it so. Just because fear feels real doesn't make it fact. And just because fear is loud doesn't mean it's right. Because God's promises are louder than your fears. His faithfulness is greater than your fears, and his power is greater than your fears. So when fear starts talking, you talk back. You remind fear who God is. You remind fear what God said. You remind fear of every mountain God has already brought you over. You remind fear of every prayer he's already answered. You remind fear of every battle you've already survived. And then you stand on the promise, because fear gets a voice, yes, but fear does not get the final word. God does. So when fear starts talking, you remember the promise. When nothing makes sense, you remember the promise. Some chapters of our life simply don't make sense. Some prayers aren't answered the way we thought. Some doors closed that we prayed would open. Some disappointments take the wind out of us. And sometimes all we can say is, Lord, I don't understand. And here's what I've learned. Not everything in life makes sense. Here's what I know, that God has never failed me. He's not failed me, not even once. There were times I didn't understand him, but he was faithful. There was times I couldn't feel him, I couldn't see him, but he was faithful. There were times I cried and I wondered, but he was faithful. Romans 8:28 reminds us that he works all things together for our good. Even this heartbreak, even this disappointment, even this delay, even this chapter, and after everything he's already brought you through, why would you think he'd stop being God now? Remember the promise. When you want to give up, remember the promise. And maybe this is the section somebody needed most tonight. Because if we're telling the truth, there have been moments when all of us wanted to just quit. Not because we don't love God, not because we don't have faith, not because we don't believe. We wanted to give up because we got tired of fighting. We got tired of hoping. We got tired of being disappointed. We got tired of being strong. We got tired of caring so much and tired of waiting. And maybe nobody even knew. Maybe you kept showing up, you kept smiling, you kept serving, but on the inside, you were exhausted. On the inside, you were wondering, how much more can I take? Does anybody understand what I'm talking about? It was the moment where you say, I don't know if I can take any more. The moment where you start wondering if the dream is worth it. The moment where you wonder if your prayers will ever be answered. The moment where you're tempted to settle, to just stop believing, to just stop trying, to just stop hoping. Can I tell you something tonight? These moments do not make you weak. They make you human. But here's what I've learned. Feelings make terrible decision makers. So because if I had quit every time I felt like quitting, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I most certainly would not be here speaking to you tonight. If I had quit every time life got hard, I would have missed some of God's greatest blessings. If I had quit during the painful seasons, I would have never seen what God was doing. And maybe that's the word for somebody tonight. Don't make a permanent decision. This is a temporary season. Don't walk away because you're tired. Don't abandon the dream because it's difficult. Don't stop praying because you haven't seen the answers yet. Don't give up. Because what if your breakthrough is closer than you think? What if God is working right now? What if the very thing you've been praying for is already in motion? What if you're standing closer to the promise than you've ever been before? Ladies, after everything you've survived, after every moment, after every mountain you've climbed, after every battle you fought, you didn't come this far to give up now. God didn't bring you this far to leave you. God didn't carry you through all those seasons to abandon you now. God didn't sustain you through every valley to let you fall apart now. He's still working with you. He's still working. He's still faithful. And so if you have to crawl, you crawl. If you have to rest, you rest. If you have to cry, you cry. But don't you dare give up. Because one day you're going to look back at this season and thank God you held on. You're going to thank God you kept believing. You're going to thank God you remembered what he said. So when you feel like giving up, you remember the promise. And ladies, before I leave you tonight, can I remind you that you have already survived things you thought would break you. You've already cried tears you never told anybody about. You've already walked through valleys you never thought you'd come out of. You've already had moments when you didn't know how you were going to make it. And yet, here you are. You're still standing. You're still believing. You're still praying. You're still showing up. You're still trusting. Not because you've been strong all the time. Not because you've had all the answers. And not because life has been easy. You're still here because God has been faithful. He's been faithful in the tears. He's been faithful in the waiting. He's been faithful in the heartbreak and the uncertainty. He's been faithful in the seasons that made no sense. He's been faithful when you were strong. He's been faithful when you were tired. He's been faithful when you didn't understand. He's been faithful when all you had left was a whisper that said, Lord, I trust you. And after everything he's already brought you through, every mountain he's helped you climb, every door he's opened, every prayer he's answered, every time he made a way when there seemed to be no way, why would we think he'd stop being God now? He's still faithful. He's still working. He's still making a way. He's still healing. He's still restoring. He's still opening doors. He's doing only what God can do. The promise still stands. The dream still stands. The purpose still stands. And so do you. So when you can't see it, you remember the promise. When the promise seems delayed, you remember the promise. When you're tired, you remember the promise. When fear starts talking, you remember the promise. When nothing seems like it's making sense, you remember the promise. When you want to give up, you remember the promise. Because the same God who made the promise is the same God who will fulfill it. Keep believing, keep trusting, keep showing up, keep praying, keep dreaming, and keep moving forward. And above all else, you remember the promise. Thank you very much, ladies.